Hello everybody, greetings from UN Habitat in Nairobi. We really appreciate this opportunity to give you a brief introduction to UN Habitat and GLTN's work on land-based finance. We have the benefit of more than a decade of experience developing a pro-poor approach to land administration and governance. It's not just a challenge to deal with land, there are also enormous opportunities to leverage land in order to achieve positive outcomes. An important example is the massive untapped potential of collecting revenues using land. And with that, opportunities to provide infrastructure and services to everyone, including the marginalized and especially women and youth. So what is GLTN? We are a network of 83 international partners formed in 2006. We work together to contribute to poverty reduction and sustainable development through promoting secure land and property rights for everyone. We do this through multidisciplinary partnerships, and we develop and test and promote pro-poor, gender-responsive land tools. Who are the partners? Some of the partners, and they fall into 5 categories: professional bodies, research and training institutions, bilateral and multilateral organizations, and urban and rural civil society groups. What is a GLTN land tool? For us, a land tool is a practical way to solve a problem in land governance, to put principles, policies, and legislation into effect. Tools can be, 1, a specific ready-to-use product, or an approach and a process. Our tools are divided into 5 tool development areas: access to land and tenure security, land management and planning, land administration information, land-based finance, which is the one we're discussing now, and land policy legislation. Why do we need to leverage land? The graph you see presents the extraordinary urbanization rates between 1950 and 2050. By 2050, 2 out of every 3 people will live in urban areas. Are you aware of the estimated percentage in your country by 2050? So our key premise is that this urbanization wave will deeply affect developing countries, and national strategies need to be found to provide for all these people. Premise 2 is that local governments, particularly, will need to generate additional resources to meet the increased demand for infrastructure and services, and leveraging land can play a significant role in achieving this. The question is, where will these resources come from? Many urban authorities are under-resourced and unable to meet the growing demand for affordable land services and infrastructure, including maintenance. This does not bode well for achieving the development goals set for 2030. So, with our understanding, land-based finance is a range of tools and mechanisms by which local governments can raise land-based taxes and fees in order to expand their revenue base and deliver the services needed for communities to develop. What are the advantages of leveraging land? Land doesn't move. When implemented, taxes and fees are difficult to avoid. And land-based taxes and fees tend to promote transparency and accountability in local government, promote effective, compact and productive land use, are fair when properly implemented, and can promote transparency, and they can be pro-poor through improved tenure security and expanded civic engagement. We say can be because of course it depends on how they are implemented. Our approach to land-based finance accordingly is that if correctly applied, leveraging land can unlock tremendous opportunities. But it cannot work on its own. It has to work alongside and in integration with other forms of revenue collection. Land-based finance also offers unique opportunities for inclusion of and tenure security for all residents. GLTN's overall approach is based on an inclusive concept of land tenure security, backed up by innovative land tools designed to facilitate this. The more people are provided with security of tenure, the more they can become part of an inclusive and sustainable urban development process and promote a sense of citizenship and government accountability. Segments of populations are often missed due to a lack of recognized land rights. Our work in Uganda, Afghanistan and Somalia has shown that it's possible to rely, initially at least, on de facto occupation to begin with. It's not necessary to have formal proof of property rights, and that can in any case take years to achieve. You have to start somewhere. An added advantage is that this becomes part of the debate. As you start implementing land and property taxation, people start talking about tenure and tenure security and the need to fix that, fix the cadastre, and fix the system. Our land-based finance work is also based on the assumption that revenues collected should be used for improved infrastructure and essential services for the inhabitants. This is not automatically the case. It has to be a deliberate part of the program to ensure that the expenditure reaches the people who are paying the fees and taxes. What tools have we developed in order to help with this? Because GLTN is about tools. In the past decade, we've developed a number of these, including, you can see on the slide, a reader on land-based finance instruments and cases, a trainer's guide to help design and implement land-based finance training, a where to start guide on land-based finance in local governance, and a set of 9 land-based finance instructional videos. I really want to encourage you to look at the links and go and see there, because you can download the reader and guide from the as indicated, and you can access the videos via another link. And I really recommend that you at least look at the videos, but actually look at them all. So in terms of the training, our objectives and intended outcomes. The objective of the land-based finance training is to develop the capacity of local leaders and officials by enhancing their ability to implement land-based finance instruments. And the outcomes we're looking for is improved understanding, decision-making, commitment, and action. The training involves learning events targeting land officials, administrators, and professionals from developing countries, and the importance of understanding the options available and then applying those in fit-for-purpose manner in their specific context, which is also the purpose of the guide that I showed you. So now we have a diagram on the various instruments. They include recurring land value tax, recurring building tax, value tax, betterment levies, special assessments, and so on. You can see them on the slide. What I've done is I'm showing one slide, the recurring land value tax, because it will take too long to look at them all. But we will also provide a link for you to see the entire presentation where you'll see all 11 of them. So what you see on this slide is just this example. Describes the recurring land value tax, which it's a tax based on an estimate of the value of land or on land attributes. It's mostly used to recover the cost of public investments by claiming a portion of land value created by public action. There's an enormous amount of value that happens, or an increase in value that happens when there is, for example, a road built, a road tarred, a service put in, or a rezoning takes place. Some of that money belongs to the implementing government and needs to get back to them in order to then feed the system which builds the roads, etc. So, as I said, diagrams are provided for all of the 11. Please have a look at those. Then there's the reader, learning through case studies. Also well worth examining are the case studies of what local authorities around the world have done, because one could learn lessons from those on what to do and also what not to do. As you can see from the slide, our land-based finance reader includes 21 cases from 18 different countries. Have a look, I encourage you. One of the examples, just a very interesting thing that happened in a place where, in a situation where there was a desperate need for jobs, but also very little finance to maintain roads, etc., is people simply gave their labor instead of paying taxes for the infrastructure development. And in that way, this was during its terrible recession, and in that way, the infrastructure could be improved through leveraging the land. Crucial steps in our training process are to encourage and assist participants as they critically compare the instruments and as they recognize the most critical tasks and functions that could be needed in their own environment, to look at administrative requirements for successful implementation, also to recognize the political, legal, and other environmental factors, for example, Local authority cannot collect taxes without a national framework which allows them to. And to devise a prioritized list of actions is very important for us, for the trainees, that they can take back to their principals and indicate what the possibilities are. And then the last step always in the training is each participant develops a fit-for-purpose action plan. Preferably these training courses are a full 5-day course, but they can be adapted to need and available time. We've done this in several contexts, and there's information on that online. What about land-based finance in fragile states? We live in a world where fragility is increasing. Hopefully it's not going to become the new normal, but due to climate change, due to war, due to land shortage, and all sorts of other natural disasters, fragility is a real thing in many countries. So what we've been doing in the last 3 years is to work on a NORAD-funded project on land and property taxation in fragile states. As you can see from the slide, the project's change model suggests that once they've consolidated and scaled up, good practices in land and property taxation in fragile states can help establish a virtuous cycle of good governance that can contribute to service delivery, reconstruction, citizenship building, and security of tenure, including for the marginalized. The emphasis there is on CAM. The streams of work that we've done in this project are diagnostic assessments in Somalia and Afghanistan, on the basis of which we learned lessons and started making some proposals and development of innovative methods and tools to enhance land-based finance revenues. Also, what we've done is we run a learning series, quite a few of them a year, with a large number of international participants, and also in-country training events. And lastly, we use the lessons that are learnt to develop potential application in other countries, and currently we're making proposals and working on the groundwork in DRC and in Palestine. Key lessons from this project. 1. Land-based finance can most definitely increase overall revenue. There's no doubt about that. It's not a difficult one to do if you've got the political will and you improve the systems. Revenue increases can, but do not automatically lead to increased expenditure and improved service delivery. We think this is a big weakness when it doesn't happen, for reasons that I think we've already explained, but we'll look at them again. Deliberate measures and innovations are required to secure the desired outcome. So you have to actively be working on a model that includes both the increase of the revenues and the subsequent expenditure that it gets used for, and that can be important in your communication strategy also, with the benefiting communities, so that you start building that virtuous cycle. Intervention should be based on local needs and aspirations, with long-term commitment and an agreed sustainability plan. And lastly, land and property taxation remains a very male-dominated space. There's an urgent need for more gender-balanced participation. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We really hope this video has given you food for thought on how to implement land-based finance with the aim of improving local infrastructure and services and promoting prosperity and land tenure security for all. Thank you very much.